bonding. We've got folks up here advocating for equal rights amendment, for things around gun safety, talking about all of these issues that matter to them, and that's what the legislature's for. As far as budgeting goes, this is a non-budget year. We'll get some more numbers here in a few weeks where we'll have a little better idea. We'll put out a supplemental budget sometime in March, and that'll give us kind of a plan. We're focused heavily on bonding bill, focused on some of the fixes around the school resource officer issue. There's some technical fixes around standard deduction and taxes. So I think that's what we're going to do. The legislature will work its will. We'll work with them. My biggest focus is, though, these historic changes to make life better for Minnesotans need to continue to move forward.
How are you feeling?
Yeah, the sports betting issue, and again, probably appropriate last night where I saw the billions of dollars that gets wagered on this. You've heard my philosophy around many of these things, that I trust adults to make their decisions, but I think you need to have good structure when you do these things. I think the issue still is, can they get a bill through the House and Senate that meets all those constituency needs? If they do, I've said I will sign it. It seems to me like this is probably the year to talk about that in a non-budget year. They've done a lot of work in the past. I think we know where the bottlenecks are. Senator Miller introduced a placeholder to start it out. I would guess they'll probably get close to get something done. We'll see.
How are you feeling about?
Yeah, the SRO issue. Look, and many of you heard me say this. Teaching in a classroom for 20 years, my school had SROs. We worked side by side with them. Not all schools do. The issue here is pretty unanimous agreement. We want our schools to be safe and we want our students to be protected. We want to make sure the folks who do that, whether they be teachers or whether they be school resource officers, have a clear path of what they need to do when there are situations that warrant maybe doing some type of restraint on students. And the issue was to make sure all of those needs were met in a way that satisfied all of our goals. Safe students, safe schools, and protections for the folks who are doing it. So I hope what comes out of this is the compromise around that, where SROs feel confident they can be there, the League of Cities feels confident, parents, teachers, and advocates feel confident about that. And what we get is what we know we all want, and we're going to continue to work for, is the safest learning environment possible.
How are you feeling about the margin in the Senate, given the new majority leader? Are you feeling good? Do you feel like the GFL is going to be able to hold it together there?
Yeah, those senators are fantastic. The question was about the majority in the Senate, and we have a new majority leader. Again, I think there's there's a bit of melancholy around this, but we're incredibly hopeful that Carrie Dietzig recovers her health and comes back. She's been an absolute champion for Minnesotans. Senator Murphy's an experienced legislator, has great relationships, and my anticipation is they won't miss a beat over there. They'll continue. The question, and that'll be for the folks who are here, ERA amendments, gender justice, some of those, the issue around reproductive rights being rolled into the ERA. Look, body sovereignty is a big piece of equal rights amendment. Body sovereignty is a big piece of what should be there. I think they will craft that. Again, this is one that I speak to you as a Minnesotan more than anything, because this will be on the ballot. It won't be something I'll sign, but I encourage, and I'm grateful to see these folks here. I'm supportive of the ERA amendment. I'm supportive of reproductive rights. I think we can get something done. I would leave that to the experts who are on this. So one thing I can tell you is these things take a lot of work. Being a chair of the Veterans for Marriage Equality, I was part of that long-ranging discussion to win that ballot initiative. You don't just put something on with all of the stuff that needs to be done to make this happen. Because look, those who are against reproductive rights, those who are against equal rights, are going to wage a campaign against it. And my take is they will bring it forward when it's ready to pass.
Governor, assault rifle ban, do you support that?
I want to see what they bring forward on this. Anything that moves us closer on smart firearms legislation, I'll see what they bring forward, see how it's crafted. The one thing I can tell you with absolute certainty is we do not need these weapons of war in our classrooms, on our streets, in the Capitol building. And I think we saw here in Minnesota, we've seen it enacted already. Red flag laws save lives. Extensive background checks save lives. They do nothing to infringe upon your Second Amendment rights. So I'm interested to see what comes out of it. The question on the end-of-life amendment, and Again, I speak to you from my family's experience. I was a teenager, my little brother was 8, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad was dying of lung cancer, and I watched him spend about 2.5 weeks in the hospital on life support with no chance of recovery, no consultation in the family, and no options other than massive medical bills and pain and a death in a hospital. I've made it clear and personal on this. I think it's worth looking deeply at a death with dignity, understanding there are deep challenges to this, both ethically and operationally, but I think it warrants having that conversation, having seen what happens.
Any comments on some of the Washington projects such as
Yeah, not super familiar with the hyperlink on this that we did, but have been a supporter of high-speed rail in the past to get there. And the question on MedTech 3.0, look, we're trying to build an economy for the future, one where it's a clean energy economy, MedTech, AgTech. We're going to have to, Minnesotans, we're going to have to figure out how do we feed 10 billion people, how do we address climate change, and how do we tackle some of the most difficult health questions. Mayo Clinic's $5.5 billion investment, Destination Medical's investment, the infrastructure pieces on that. I'm super excited about this just as a whole of the state, and seeing Rochester go will impact how Brookston goes. So we're excited about it.
The whole point imagery behind those bars that you were passing out is about bipartisanship. You've got the trifecta.
Yeah.
It's an election year. Is there room for bipartisanship this year?
Absolutely. And I'm going to thank, look, I get it. And I served in the majority and in the minority in Congress. It's terrible to be in the minority. It's especially terrible if you feel like you're not being heard at all. And I think what we're trying to do is make sure there's room here. A bonding bill has to be bipartisan. Dean Erdahl is the champion of the bonding bill, and we're counting on him. And I heard those legislators over there, and I want to thank them. Something that's near and dear to my heart is our work around veterans, veterans care, veterans homelessness, veterans suicide, veterans home. Those Republican legislators are the ones that have been my ally in doing a veterans omnibus separate of everything else. And I know it's not super popular amongst everybody, but it's the right thing to do. We should pass a veterans and military omnibus separate of the rest of the budget. So yeah, I think there's money.
Governor.
I'll tell you, roads and bridges are not Republican or Democratic roads and bridges. The Botnick Bridge is going to serve all of us. Just heard Representative Guam talk about the overpass at Byron he wants to bring up. Those who've driven Highway 14 know I'm partial. Highway 14, I welcome his leadership.
Governor, can you talk about the opioid epidemic?
Well, if I thought they cared what I thought for the first bill, it would be an exciting day. Look, I think the SRO bill has the potential to be there. I think there's a very simple bipartisan fix on the tax bill that makes sure that we protect the middle class. I think some of those things that are just fixes to come forward. The rest are going to take a lot more work.
Can you speak about the opioid epidemic?
I can speak about the opioid epidemic. As we know, this in Minnesota also going to lift up Jeremy Drucker, who was elevated to a cabinet level, governor level position to make sure we're addressing the whole issue, both in the terms of working with our federal partners to stop the flow of fentanyl, xylazine, some of the other things coming into Minnesota, but also working on the mental health pieces, the treatment pieces, and understanding that each of our families can be touched by this. And I think this is a session to start leaning in more. We're seeing the mental health advocates, the addiction treatment advocates, family advocates leaning heavily into that. So I do hope we can do more on this. I do think that it all ties together. It ties into the homeless situation. It ties into the unaffordability of housing, putting people in situations that we can do better. It's the reason that we have focused on, and I am proud of this, Minnesota now ranks as the most equitable state for taxes, meaning the most favorable to folks who are working. And our child tax credit, if you want to wonder how this meets with this issue, families that are under stress experience these things even more. If we can reduce those stresses, housing, food insecurity, that all makes a big difference.
What about the U of M buying back the hospital?
Yeah, question about the U of M, and I'm going to give a big thank you to the task force led by Jan Malcolm on this, but I'm going to also give a big thank you two former governors gave an immense amount of their time, Tim Paolini and Mark Dayton, to coming together. They put together the proposals that you've seen. It's a challenge because healthcare, it's a stretch of the imagination to say we have a system in this country. It's hodgepodge, it's unfair, people go broke by debt, they can't get in. With that being said, the teaching hospital at the University of Minnesota is absolutely paramount for the training of 70% of our workforce across Minnesota. It's also a place that accepts Medicaid and people can get into to get the best quality of care, including things like a liver transplant if they needed it. So we are committed to working together with them. What that actual plan looks like, what it looks like in physical infrastructure, I don't know that at this time. I think that's where this was meant to be the roadmap, and now we're on that path.
Governor, can you respond to the criticism over the commissioner raises? Were those justified in your mind, and why?
Well, my first thing is we passed this a year ago and they voted on it. For goodness sakes, this has been in place for a year. Secondly, is I'm not going to make any apologies for hiring and being able to be competitive with the best people who run agencies, multi-billion-dollar agencies with thousands of employees who do it at a fraction of every time you list what CEO salaries are or major leadership in that. This is fair to try and get there. You can't have it both ways. You can't criticize us for not hiring good commissioners in or being able to attract good people and then say you don't want to pay them. So that's a hill I'm going to die on. You need to pay people fairly on this. If they want to, I would tell them this. I did not take a raise. I will not take that. But I will surround myself with people who could go anywhere else and make far more money, but they're choosing to serve the people of Minnesota.
Governor, what can you do